Parliament pushing and saying no to this. And he says, finally, what you're seeing is a result of our work. City, the day's proverb tafadhali before we go on.
Yes, hunger is better than shame. Mheshimiwa disagreed.
No, I agreed.
Comprehensively. He said, so long as I'm full. You can
shame me as much as you like.
Okay, Ziti, what do you think? Is what we are seeing as a result of Azimio pressure?
Azimio pressure has definitely contributed significantly, but the affairs of this country and the happenings therein are often a factor of more than just the opposition having a say and those in power resisting. As Mheshimiwa himself has already alluded to, we are in a global village, and because of the interests of some of our friendly partners, they also have influence which is brought to bear in situations such as ours, because if we are unstable, then their business interests are also unstable. And it has also been said, Kenya is significant, one, because of its geographical location, but also it's because of just the weight and the magnitude of investments that are here. And if you look at the way Western nations position themselves, it's not just Kenya, it's the region. So a destabilized Kenya destabilizes all the plans they have for the region, and that is not something that they would like. The problem is, and this one I agree with Mheshimiwa, when someone like the ambassador, the American ambassador to Kenya, makes a statement such as the one she does, yes, she may simply be looking at the court proceedings and saying, look, if the court pronounced itself this way, then surely all these ducks are in a row. But she misses the salient point of our politics, because we have observer groups that come not to Kenya but to this continent, and some of the most, if I may use a Kenyan term, shambolic elections that we know occur, and they give those elections a clean bill of health, and they say it was, generally. So essentially, it's like when it comes to Africans, they have a low bar. So long as, not too many people die, not too many things are in the offing, then it's a credible election. It would have been infinitely better if she hadn't said what she said. But having said that, there's a reason why she said it. It's not as though, this I disagree with Mheshimiwa. It's not that she doesn't know what she was saying. She knew exactly what she was saying, in her opinion. And there's a reason why she said it.
What's the reason?
There is need to show support for the president and his position. Because how then do you have a country where your partner, your foreign partner, also cast aspersions as to your presidency? How does that work out? There has to be a definitive statement that we support this government, a definitive statement that the process that were followed we believe were legit and they were proper, and this is the elected leader of this country. It's important.
Yes. The leader of Azimio is an experienced politician and a statesman who has engaged with such processes many times before. Do you think that's what he heard? And that's why he was also kicking a fuss?
The agenda...
Why are you supporting him?
The agenda that someone in the opposition would have if they're a politician, the best you can do is take a guess. Because what you see and hear is often not what is really happening. There's something else that you have no clue about that is in the offing. We discussed in this very same studio these matters of the discussions and this. And you heard my pronouncement. I said, these groups will meet, they will talk, and a conclusion will be arrived at. This was what, a month and a half ago? There is an African proverb about frogs and toads running in broad daylight. Usually, when they shout loudly, there's danger somewhere. They know something is happening. So every time I heard the government, people who are affiliated to the government speaking loudly that there'll be no talks, I knew there were going to be talks. I knew. They were actually confirming to me that there were going to be talks, because the noise was too loud about there not being talks.
And the outcome, we can see...
Yes.
Some semblance of what is going to come out of these talks.
One has to see it, because at the end of the day, it isn't as though our Western partners are going to just side with the government. They will be, if that was so, why then do they have conversations with the leader of the opposition? Because they're having conversations with everybody. Why are they having conversations?
The reason is very simple, and this is one of the criticisms that has been extended to these Western powers, is that for them, the most important thing is what they call stability of a country. They want a stable, quiet, passive
Is it stability
population.
According to their definition?
To their definition. According to their definition,
What
because
works
for them, they would want as little noise as possible for them to be able to do business here, to secure long-term contracts with government for their companies back at home, because these ambassadors really are not just political ambassadors.
No.
They are also economic ambassadors. And they would like regimes that then, have this semblance of stability. And they like, even this democracy talk, is very hush-hush when it comes to African countries. They would prefer if they had this so-called stable leader who's here for 20, 30 years and they are happy to secure long-term contracts for Monsanto and Bechtel and the others. But they, that is where the problem is. And you yourself have alluded to it. In fact, in 2017, before our Supreme Court overturned Uhuru's victory, the Observer Mission had given the election a clean bill of health, not knowing that there are things that go on in this country that perhaps only Kenyans can know. It's like when you visit, when we were growing up, when you visit somebody's home and you sit there as a guest and you see, this house is very clean, the children are very well behaved. It is because you are there as a guest. That is why people. That is why the house looks clean.
Or when you eat chicken, rice, and chapati, it is because you are there. Yes.
Sometimes a visitor would be sitting there and looking at, these children are so well behaved. They are eating so nicely, chewing nicely. It's because your mother shoots you an eye. The guest will never see that eye, but you are the only one who knows you're being terrorized. You're not enjoying the meal. The guys are like, look at the children. They're so happy together, very well behaved. Hey, my friend, there's things that we know. So sometimes these guys, they miss those nuances, and the problem is that they then, front load this question of stability. But even in the US, even their own concept of democracy has been challenged. There was a time when I think the world believed that American democracy had matured. They've come a long way. I think they have done 200 years of democracy, and they became complacent. They didn't think that they would ever see a point where a sitting president would call electors in Georgia to tell them to change election results. As we speak right now, a former president is being indicted for exactly that. They never thought that after the pronouncement of the Supreme Court or the declaration of results, that there would be an assault on the House of Congress. We saw it. It happened in our lifetime. So it's not as if even for them things are perfect back at home. But all we are saying is, please, there are some things you just accept that you don't know. I cannot be an expert in American social life and political life. I go there, I make my observations, I leave. But here in Kenya, like the example I've given you of the house, a lot of things are happening that you don't know. Yeah, even the cockroaches cooperate on the day the visitor comes. Say, hii nyumba haina hata mende, my friend. Ukitoka tu.
Accountability, Senator, is one of the things that the Houses of Parliament are supposed to do is oversight. And okay, we've seen that. We've seen cabinet secretaries coming to the National Assembly, coming to the Senate. And it's part of the oversight. Well, you amended your standing orders so that you can ask direct questions to this.
Yes.
The Senate being one that is supposed to be taking care of devolution matters and oversighting devolution, do you think it would be better if you actually had governors coming?
Governors do come. Actually, City,
not just being summoned.
Eric, I keep calling you City.
I don't know why.
They live in the same house. They start to look alike.
They start looking alike. I think it's the beard.
Not just being summoned to appear before committees to respond to specific issues, but coming the way cabinet secretaries are now coming.
Now, you see,
even
for this question of cabinet secretaries appearing before members of parliament, it is actually a vindication of us, because we were saying these things during the BBI process, that as representatives of the people, we need to interact with these policy and decision makers in a more direct route. The model that we have does not work in terms of giving us that close scrutiny of the people in those positions. And they refused. You remember they rubbished all these things, including that question of the office of opposition leader. It was one of the proposals in the BBI process. We have objected. We in the Senate have objected to the amendment of the standing orders to allow cabinet secretaries to appear in plenary, because we believe that it is amending the constitution through the back door. We believe that because the constitution already provides a mechanism for the interaction between members of the executive and parliament, then for you to rearrange that entire setup, you have to actually amend the constitution itself. But they went in a roundabout way, a shortcut through the standing orders and amended it. We in the Senate filed a matter before the High Court to interpret for us that decision, whether it was constitutional or not. We are waiting for the judgment. It is coming in October. And because we filed that particular case, we in the minority do not attend those sessions where the cabinet secretaries appear. But these cabinet secretaries can be summoned because that is the power that the constitution grants both houses. You can summon them before the committees, and the committees are the best avenues for oversight in my own experience. I am a member of the Public Accounts Committee of the Senate. I am a member of the Energy Committee. I'm a member of the Transport Committee, and I'm very proud of the work that we have done in these committees. I'll give you the example of CPAC, for instance. We get to interrogate the audited accounts of each county, and we go through line by line how money has been utilized. And in those interactions, we have been able to learn a few things and then propose a few things in terms of trying to move the country forward. So for instance, when you interact with county governors, one of the challenges of devolution has been late exchequer releases, that we as a Senate pass something called a disbursement schedule. It says, so Nairobi County is entitled to 20 billion shillings annually. This is how this money is going to come, because there needs to be some degree of predictability for the administration to plan. So it says on the 15th of each month, Nairobi will receive 1.7 billion shillings. And then you spread it across the 12 months, the 12 months, right? But what has been happening is that counties would go 3-4 months without exchequer releases. And then we discovered during the interrogations at the county government that KRA, first, Treasury delays in releasing money. Then the county governments are unable to pay salaries. And if they are unable to pay salaries, they cannot remit the deductions, the statutory deductions to KRA. And then KRA levies a penalty on those delays in payment. This is your left hand. It knows Treasury has not released money. KRA is imposing penalties on counties. And that money has to be paid by the people of those counties. So we dragged the CS of Treasury and the KRA to one table before the Public Accounts Committee. And we asked them, what is the rationale here? And they gave a public commitment that those penalties would no longer be imposed on counties, because this is something that they know is wrong.
Back to my question, now, and I get what you're saying.
Yes.
My question is, do you think it would be more beneficial even to the public if governors actually came before the floor of the Senate?
I don't know about governors.
Answer direct questions, because now you see the Senate is dealing with counties. And you're talking about accountability at county level.
Yes.
Right? And looking at how counties are doing, what is happening in the counties. So if governors actually are the ones who appear before the Senate, and all senators interrogate, a governor of a certain county is the one who's coming, say Kirinyaga this time.
Yeah, I personally feel that the committees give better room for deeper interrogation of documents than plenary. There's factors of time. There's all sorts of factors. I have seen the benefit of committees. Actually, the work of the House mostly is done through committees. And the beauty with committees is that a governor can appear to answer a specific question. So, for instance, you appear before the parliamentary accounts. You know you're coming to interrogate the audited accounts of the county, how money has been spent in a specific financial year. You appear before the agriculture committee. You know this is what you're coming to answer, and it can be very incisive.
So you can prepare
and targeted. Absolutely, you can prepare, because you see also these county governors and their governments also need to work. You cannot spend your entire time in parliament. But when it comes to cabinet secretaries, just like I held the position during BBI that in fact we needed to revert back to that parliamentary system where cabinet secretaries are actually members of parliament and they can answer questions. And we gave the example of the time when we had prime minister question time. And you have seen it in other democracies. It is one of the best tools that are, a member can engage with government on a day-to-day. Because sometimes when you have this system where you have to summon people, it is usually like you are doing something after something has happened. You know, it is not like on a day-to-day. You can ask the CS today, you are in parliament, because he's in parliament with you daily. You can interrogate matters that are live every day. So the system right now is Moses Kuria will go off on a tangent as he's want to from time to time. Then you have to file a motion to say, oh, we would want to see the CS appear before us to explain this. By the time that motion comes to the floor, it's 3 weeks down the line.
Right.
You know? So it appears like you're just morticians. You are talking about things that happened 3 weeks ago. But if they are there every day with you, he goes off on a tangent today, in the afternoon, you know you're with him in the house.
Even as you talk about things continuing to happen, and here we're talking about a very vital role that Parliament plays here. And one of the things that has come up in the last few weeks is that a lot of the reports from the Auditor General have been coming out.
Yes.
And they've been, quite astonishing in terms of the kind of money that has been lost, whether it is at county level, whether it is at department level, agency level, across board. It's ridiculous. And then we keep asking the question, okay, so then who's supposed to ask the question? It comes right back to Parliament. Parliament is supposed to be asking questions about these monies that have been lost and then making recommendations after that information. Senator, the money that is being lost in this country is bleeding the cow to death.
Yes.
And you see the things that are being fought here, and we can tie all of this together. The things that are being fought: high cost of living, inability to institute subsidies because the government just does not have enough money to put around. Meanwhile, there's a bleed happening here. You're giving the cow grass, but it's bleeding from the leg. Same cow. The questions that are to be asked, where the bleed can be stopped, recommendations that can be made so that the bleed actually doesn't happen in the first place. Will we see this happen? That recommendations beyond scrutiny and investigations will happen for this to stop.
We do make those recommendations. I remember recently the governor of Nairobi appeared before the Senate committee. I think we were interrogating financial year, is it 2018-2019. One of the things that happened with Nairobi is that the governor who was there from 2017 to, I think he left in 2020 or 2019, Governor Sonko, had created an atmosphere that it was impossible for the county government of Nairobi to ever appear before the Public Accounts Committee. That every time he showed up, that meeting would be adjourned because there would be, chaos. And it was designed to ensure that there is no conversation about the accounts of Nairobi. So when Sakaja appears, he is the CEO now of the county, but we are discussing a financial year when Sonko was there. So it comes out from the Auditor General's report that, for instance, the then governor went to Mombasa and he paid, I think, some money for security. He had 2 battalions of police protecting him for, I think, 2 weeks in Mombasa. And we made that recommendation that money has to be recovered from Sonko. Yeah, because it doesn't make any sense. Why would a governor need 2 platoons of police protecting him in Mombasa for 2 weeks? It doesn't make any sense. Then you charge it to the county. So it's not as if we don't make those recommendations. We do. When the Auditor General has flagged something and he says this one was theft of public resources, we even interrogate projects. The Auditor General will go and say, yes, you said you're building market stalls or a market. And then they provide to you photographs of that market, and somebody tells you this thing is 20 million. And they're just like, bro, please, tafadhali, hii sio soko ya 20 million. Sasa mnaitisha deeper interrogation from EACC. And in fact, in our committees, we have an officer seconded from EACC seated there in the committees. We tell her, yes, this one we are forwarding to you. Immediately you commence investigations, you make sure there's an officer from Treasury, there are officers from the Office of the Auditor General. So we have this entire team that is helping us as a committee to be able to make those recommendations. The problem is that the downstream process is also very slow. And that is what frustrates people. That a recommendation such as that can be made, then it takes years. And it's just forgotten somewhere in the legal process, So it is a bit tough. But I think it is a mechanism that can work, especially if the downstream processes are streamlined.
Is it possible to catch up with the latest Auditor General's reports?
It is.
Because currently you are dealing with what?
It is possible because, like yesterday,
dealing with the 2019-2020.
we have committees. Okay, the minority side are in charge of two very important oversight committees:
Yep.
the Parliamentary Investment, the Public Investments Committee, and the Public Accounts Committee.
Yep.
So for us, as the Public Accounts Committee, where I'm a member, we are doing 2020-2021. In the Public Investment Committee chaired by Osotsi, they're also doing 2020-2021. So it is actually possible to catch up. And that is one of the things that we are trying to say. There has been a backlog. When we joined the Senate, they give you a backlog of all the committees whose, the counties whose accounts have not been analyzed. Yeah. And Nairobi was one of the biggest problems because of the issues that I've raised here, that the governor created an atmosphere that did not allow for interrogation of those accounts. And even previously, when he was a senator, the relationship between Kidero and Sonko as senator was so bad that every time, and you remember the drama that used to ensue, these things were covered live. We don't want those things. We don't want squabbles. We just want to sit as professionals and say we are looking at these accounts. We don't have to be friends. So there are counties that have been interrogated, and there are counties that were lagging behind, but we can catch up. One of the things that you've reminded me about, there was a very curious incident just the other day. Was it yesterday or the day before? When Oparanya was summoned to the EACC.
The day before yesterday.
Yes. And they are asking him questions about 2013, 2014. You know, it was very, very weird because
Why?
As a matter of fact, Kakamega County, and I sit in the park, so I know, Kakamega County was audited in 2013, 2014, a very long time ago. Those reports were presented before Senate. The governor appeared before Senate, and those matters were already dispensed with. Yeah, so it is not possible for you to come and say 2013, 2014 financial year, something that even the Senate has already interrogated and imemalizana nayo, that there are queries there, you know. EACC, as the governor himself said, EACC never paid him a visit in the 10 years he was a governor. In the time that he was a cabinet secretary or minister, never. So how is it possible for you to come and start answering for things that happened in 2013 after all the constitutional offices and processes have been exhausted?
So
It's
it
not
sounds
possible.
like it's a very simple thing. You just go and answer the question.
That's what he did, but we're saying why? Because, you know, venye tumeongea juu ya huyu Meg Whitman, there's certain contexts that people might not understand. Yeah, the president is supposed to be going to Western Kenya, and he made certain promises to the people there, and he knows the people will ask about those promises. For instance, he was very clear. He said he's going to give 30% of government to the people of Western Kenya. Now, the people of Western Kenya are waiting for him with calculators, you know, because everybody knows 30%
Of
24.
Yes, of 24, you know. So then he made very specific, you know, the problem sometimes with politics is you should not
But there was
also
a
be very
condition.
specific in...
There was a condition.
in,
Deliver
Yeah.
X amount,
That's what-
X number
that's
of
what
votes.
we're saying.
Now, did you deliver the
That's
votes?
what we're saying. Now, the calculators, that's why people are waiting.
So
with
you want to
calculators.
prorate.
Like this.
So
many votes
24
came from-
20,
Yes,
30%
that's
was
what
for
I'm saying.
X number of votes.
People are waiting for him with
If
calculators.
X number of votes are delivered, what is the percentage?
and then he made specific promises about Mumia Sugar, about Nzoia Sugar, about roads, you know. So and in fact, I remember one time in 2019 there was a certain national celebration in Kakamega Buhungu Stadium. There's a very infamous road that Ruto was caught on camera saying this road is complete. Now, unfortunately for him, that road happens to pass outside my house in Bungoma. So I know for a fact that road is not complete. Then he backtracks in 2019 and he says, now we have instructed 2 contractors to be on that road. One to start from the Bungoma side and another one from the Kakamega side. Now, as it just happens, I use that road from the Bungoma side to go to my house.
There's
I have
no
never
contractor.
cited that contractor, you know. So he knows when he's going there. And he's being told that it's a bit hostile. Then some people within his administration feed him lies that, you know, the people who are sowing discontent are these people.
led
Hey,
by-
if you squeeze them a bit,
They'll keep quiet.
they'll keep quiet.
Because again, kuna vitu tunajua hii Kenya.
Si ndio sasa ndio
It has worked before.
We know it's
Maybe it will work this time. We want to hear from you. 0719-012-600. Do you think Azimio pressure is bearing fruit? Are we seeing fruits of Azimio pressure in the country's governance now? The job of Parliament is to legislate, to represent, to oversight. We're also seeing like what was happening in the National Assembly the other day, with the Cabinet Secretary for Sport appeared to be in trouble.
Yes.
And is going to Parliament now to answer questions. And there are questions, that is specific questions that is being asked. How are you handling this ministry? How are you handling matters about youth and arts?
Yeah.
How are you handling matters about sport? Are we actually seeing progress? Do you think this is a concerted effort to paint him in a bad light? Or is it the National Assembly finally rising up to the occasion and being bipartisan in doing its job of accountability and oversight?
Yeah, I think I was, one of the things I say is that people should not expect plaudits for doing their job or, doing what's right. But it is refreshing because, as I've said, we are like on an eternal quest for that objective truth. What is this one thing that we can agree upon as members of the opposition and members of those people who are in power? On the question of sports, I think everybody is in agreement that there's a problem. In my other life, I happen to be the informal patron of the Kenya Lionesses, which is a women's rugby team in Kenya. When this team was going for the African region qualifiers in Madagascar just a few months ago, would you believe I am the highest level government official, because as a member of parliament I'm also a member of government,
Yes.
who visited with that team before they left for Madagascar? It just doesn't make any sense. I have raised various questions on the floor of the house, even when they were going for there was a tournament they were going a few months back, I think it was in October in Uganda, and they call you and they say, we don't have this, we don't have that, there's no clarity when we are traveling, there are no arrangements, there's nothing, nobody from the ministry has come to see us, just to give them morale. I think there's a problem there, and my brother Babu has to pull his socks up. And for us, we have not fully realized the potential of sport, because the economy is not giving the young people any alternatives. If you look at the Kenya secondary schools games that were happening in Kakamega, look at the crowds that were showing up to just watch Shanderema and Muzingu play. It shows you that there is the interest and there's a talent. And if it is harnessed, because if you noticed, immediately the big corporates realized that there's a big crowd at Buhungu, they started appearing, advertising holdings here. That is how you make money from sports. I have given people the example. If you look at what the Saudis are doing right now, they have raised the level to unimaginable heights, because they are giving people ridiculous amounts of money to come and play in their league. But people don't know that the Saudis are now shining, a spotlight on their own country and on their own sport. That is exactly what you're supposed to do. It shocked me the other day that after, as your senator, fighting for increase of resources to Nairobi, there is not a single allocation budget line like this for support of the Nairobi sports associations, the boxing associations, the football associations, because we have registered county sporting associations. So I call my majority leader, I call the chairman of the budget, I call the chairman of sports in the county assembly. I asked him, how is it possible that you have never allocated this money? So one of the amendments that I'm dealing with to the law, I want to bring an amendment to the Sports Act and to the Public Finance Management Act to mandate counties, out of the money that we give you as devolution, you set aside at least 1% of that money for the sports associations. These guys come to our offices every time they have, like the Nairobi Boxing Association came to my office. They have a tournament in Vihiga in September. They present to you an annual budget. The annual budget is about 2.7 million shillings only. They have referees to pay. They have venues to pay. They have transport costs. All of those things. There is no single line allocation in the county's budget for them. That's what I'm telling you.
How does it happen, though? Because you see, the county budgeting process is a long one.
Yes.
There is public participation and input.
Yes.
I'm assuming that they've presented this in those committees.
Absolutely.
As associations.
Yes.
I'm assuming that they've also tried to lobby to those people that you've talked about.
Yes.
The sports committee in the county assembly, the other leaders in the county assembly. How does it pass all that? I mean,
I don't know how it passes, but also it is a question of attitude. Like, how do people perceive sport and the potential of sport to actually uplift the life of the people of Nairobi? So you have the Kenya Primary Schools Sports Association. They come to my office and they say the last time that they got uniforms was when Kidero was governor. And it just doesn't make any sense, you know. So we have these kids who appear at the national games representing Nairobi County, and they look like they have come from Sijui where. It is the shame that City was talking about. We should be ashamed, all of us.
Some of them are no longer, those who received the uniforms,
they are no longer
they're in secondary school now.
Yeah. So what we want to do is the discussion about sport is a very serious discussion. And the tragedy was that when the Sports Act was passed initially, there was a sports fund that was established under that act.
Yes.
And the purpose of that fund was to do exactly what we're discussing here, to support grassroots sports associations such as the ones that I've mentioned. And initially, the bulk of the money that was going into the sports fund was supposed to come from sports betting. And this is why I say, you know, the people you elect to Bunge must be people who understand things. They must understand things.
And see them in context.
So initially, people did not believe or did not appreciate the potential of sports betting. Now, if you are a person who understands things and the nature of life, you would know that sports betting is one of the biggest industries in the West, in the world. So this guy is sitting in Bunge say, pesa yote ile tutatoa kwa sports betting tutaweka kwa hii sports fund, wacha waende wajenge hii vijana viwanja na nini, because they don't know the potential until
they see
the day they saw the numbers. They discovered, kumbe there is money here. They go and amend the Sports Act to now say money from that fund will be used to support universal health care. It's rubbish. You know, it's just rubbish. And that is how the sports fund died. Now, the bulk of the money is going to support UHC. Sports has been totally neglected. Nothing is happening anywhere, you know. So one of the things we need to do is to have this conversation on reversing that amendment to the Sports Act, because it is detrimental to our young people. So I don't think that it is a bad thing to see when members of parliament come together and say, no, for this one, enyewe we
made a mistake.
We didn't make a mistake, but kuja ujitete. And my views about the caliber of cabinet secretaries is public. I said it from the beginning. I didn't believe that most of them had the capacity to occupy those offices. I did tell Kenyans that they will embarrass you. It is happening on a daily basis, and it will continue until the day that the appointing authority and parliament realize that, you know, kuna ile urafiki. Yes, you helped us campaign. Yes, you are a good mobilizer on the ground. Yes, we need to see this face in cabinet to represent your people. But at the very minimum, please, can you demonstrate that you know what you're doing in your docket?
Have the competence.
Even the president himself stands in State House and he says, some of you characters here. I know more about your ministry than you. But what did he expect? You know, the problem is him. What did he expect? It's, you see, our individual capacities are known. I believe that especially those of us who are in the public space, there are things, City, if you hear that SIFUNA is going to head Kenya's Atomic Energy Development Authority, you just say, Bana SIFUNA, please, just do something.
Even if you're on the energy.
Please, even, surely. You are my friend, Dio.
What
do I know about
Let's go to the phone lines. I've got George from Mombasa who's on the line. Good morning, George.
Good morning to you. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, my name is George.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm calling from Mombasa. And on the topic of discussion today, about Azimio putting pressure on the government, and that the government, that Kenyans have seen changes, especially because of pressure from Azimio. I don't think that is very right, and because the issues that Kenyans are going through at the moment, especially talking about the high cost of living, this is not a new discussion. We've had this discussion in this government. We've had in the previous government. Kenyans have been talking about the high cost of living. I think the discussion about the high cost of living is a discussion that politicians use to get to power. Then they backtrack on the promises they made to Kenya. And Azimio is not really playing a very important role or a very serious role on matters that are really affecting Kenyans. And this is because, as you remember, there was a time when the key issues raised in the first attempt on bipartisan talk, none was touching on real issues that were affecting Kenyans at that time. It was until the Kenyans complained that an uproar from Kenya. This is when now they brought in the issue about high cost of living and the real issues affecting Kenya. So, as a Kenyan, and this is our honest feeling about this bipartisan talks, that it is not in good faith, and it is not going to look at issues that are affecting Kenyans. These are issues that are really touching on politicians and their wish for power and other issues, but they are not really touching on the issues affecting Kenyans.
Okay.
And this is why, the number one reason why I believe these are not issues that are really affecting Kenyans, because, as you remember, the first reading of the bill in the National Assembly, some key Azimio leaders were conspicuously missing in the National Assembly. And they never told Kenyans that, why they were missing in those discussions. And that's why we believe that actually these discussions are not really focused on
they're not about us.
That are really affecting Kenya.
Okay, thank you, George. We hear you. 0719-012-600. Let's hear your views on what Azimio is doing. So, Senator, he says, well, he hears everything that you've said, but he doesn't believe that Azimio is really championing the cause of the public.
I don't know what else we can do, because, you know, they say that a lie has been repeated so many times that these talks are about something other than what we say they are. You know, at some point I'm even, I ask myself, what other language can I use? It is not factual for him to say that initially when these talks began that they were about something else. I would have loved for you to ask him, when this thing began, what were we saying? Because he said after public uproar is when we brought the cost of living. If I remember correctly, at the initial meeting at Jivanji, I think it was in February, way before we started Maandamano and the others, we gave a 14-day ultimatum to government to address those first price of fuel, price of unga. If you remember, this thing was about unga from the beginning. And then those 4 issues that I spoke about, they have never changed. And he says that our pressure does not yield, is not the result of this thing. I gave the example of the cabinet decision to privatize mills and other government parastatals without parliamentary oversight. What would have happened, Eric, if everybody kept quiet? What do you think would have happened? By now, we would have been talking a different story. All of those things would have been sold. Everything would have gone, you know? So these discussions, it is like when somebody comes around and realizes that what he was doing was wrong and decides to take a different course. I said from the beginning of this show that we are not here to gloat or to take credit. We are saying you are now doing the right thing. And as I said on my tweet, that sense is now beginning to prevail, because sometimes we ask ourselves, how is it that I can see this thing as a bottle and my brother City is seeing a bucket? It doesn't make any sense. So when they come around and see, yes, this is what has happened. Number 2, and lastly on George, on the question of the vote in the House, first of all, he should know that it is of public record that the people who absented themselves without reason, especially those from ODM, are the subject of disciplinary processes within the party. Now, what I find baffling is that somebody would blame a member of the opposition who absented themselves and say nothing to the member of Kenya Kwanza who came there to impose the pain. You know? You actually forget
I think all are in agreement about that one who imposed the pain.
Yes.
The question is about this other one.
That's what I'm wondering.
Ought to have added the numbers.
Who should bear the greater blame? And by the way, because we know certain things, again, we have come back to this conversation, that even if I presented all my members of parliament on the floor, because they tell us, oh, what are your alternatives? It is impossible for me to persuade people on the other side because they are voting machines. They have come to vote. Even in the Senate, we get so frustrated. You come prepared for a debate, then you hear the speaker calls you and tells you, these guys are saying we put the question. And we have to bargain. They say, okay, now we will give you 2 speaking slots. It's a house of debate. Why can't we debate these issues? You know? And I am sitting across from my colleagues there, knowing that it doesn't matter how much sense I make.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
They have their marching orders.
It doesn't matter how much I cry on behalf of the
2 callers on the line. Let's hear them.
They will not accept.
Let's hear these 2 callers. Oh, one of them is gone. Kibet, call back. Evans in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning, Latif.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I wish to first of all appreciate the contribution of the Senator for Nairobi. What I can say from my side is that the meme brigade has done a lot. Owing to what started at the beginning, the government would be a bit reckless without checks and balances, and I think they're doing. My contribution to the CS, the vote went on Thursday, I think, or on Wednesday. I do feel that CS Namwamba is trying his level best. I want to bring this to the attention of the Senator that people who operate in the ministries have stayed there for so long. And it's very difficult for a member, for a CS to come in and change those things overnight. Those CSs that have succeeded, the likes of the late John Michuki, the late Professor Magoha, and Dr. Matiang'i, the bulldozers, they push things hard. So for us to expect a cabinet secretary without a goodwill of the civil service to serve the people of Kenya, it's impossible. So I do feel that there is a lot at stake. We elect wrong people into offices, and when the right people speak, we claim they have not been given anything or they have not been fed. Currently, if Azimio is not doing anything, a number of members of the government or elected members from that side will do a lot of harm to this country.
Thank you, Evans. Thank you very much. He says yes.
Yeah,
but for your noise.
Absolutely. I'll go back to the example of the hawk and the chicks. But one of the things that I disagree with him is that the ultimate responsibility for the ministry is on the CS. And Kenyans don't expect that. I think we all are aware that there are bureaucrats in certain places that make the operations of or any changes to any institutions very difficult to do, to achieve. I know that myself as SG of ODM. There are things that are difficult to change within the party because of entrenched positions, entrenched interests, and so on and so forth. But the responsibility is for that CS to address his challenges to the public. People can tell when you're trying. I think people can tell effort. You see, even for us, the example that I gave in the Senate is that I know for a fact I am never going to convince Khalwale to vote with me. If I was unable to convince Khalwale to vote for 407 billion to go to the counties as opposed to 385, what do you think I will ever convince him for? And this is not money coming to Sifuna.
No.
This is money going to Kakamega. And he says he has received a phone call from State House to vote 385. But people know that I am incumbent. I don't have the numbers on the floor. Nairobians, the country knows Azimio has fewer number of senators, and that our friends are not amenable to persuasion, and that when it comes to a vote, I will lose the vote, but they want to see you try. Yes, that's all people are saying. So even the CS should be able to give it a shot and address the challenges he's facing. He said, yes, I tried to do this and this is the obstacle that I met. What do you guys think? And that is what I usually do. I go back to the people of Nairobi and explain to them, I have used English, I've used Kiswahili, I've used Kiluya. I am unable to convince Khalwale.
Thank you.
So what do you want me to do?
On the same note, if we had marshaled all those members, even the absentee ones, and yes, I know, I appreciate that you are, at least people would be saying all Azimio MPs came and they spoke and they tried.
Yeah, but
now beyond that,
let me tell you,
the other
Eric,
guys what
let
they
me
did.
tell you, Eric.
So, time imeisha.
No. Some of this criticism is usually very unfair.
Time imeisha.
Because the criticism should be targeted at the people who do not want to listen to you.
Both sides.
They are using no.
Both sides.
No,
the side that has voted, the side that has introduced this bill has received its criticism. The side that ought to have contributed in pushing
let me say this one
also
point
gets
and
its
then
criticism. I have closed the conversation.
No, just please
have a
don't
lovely
close.
weekend.
Please don't close.
Let's go to Nakuru.
No,
enjoy Sam.
Now this time I would have made my point already.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.